Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural session of the American Bar Association's India Conference 2023, titled Law in the Age of Glocalisation, Convergence of India and the West. We are honored to have with us the Honorable Chief Justice of India, Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who is here with us today as our keynote speaker. Joining him today are the Solicitor General of India, Mr. Tushar Mehta, who will be joining us shortly. We also have here Mr. Marcos Rios, the chair of ABA's International Section, Ms. Lubna Shuja, President of the Law Society of England and Wales, the Honorable Mr. Justice Michael T. Williams, Judge Supreme Court of Hawaii, Ms. Pratibha Jain, the chair of the India Committee of the ABA, as well as the co-chair of the India Committee of the ABA. We've got Ms. Purvi Chatani. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And I would like to invite all of you here at the dais to light the lamp and inaugurate the session. Thank you so much. Before we start today's proceedings, I would like to invite all of you seated here to please switch off your cell phones or put them on silent for the session so that we can all pay full attention to the speakers. Thank you. And now, first of all, I would like to invite Ms. Pratibha Jain, the chair of the India Committee of the ABA, to the dais. Ms. Jain is the head of strategy and group general counsel at the Everston Group. Prior to Everston, Ms. Jain was a partner at Nishit Desai Associates. She is the chair of the India Committee of the American Bar Association and is an alumnus of Harvard Law School, Oxford University, and Delhi University. She has worked with some of the top firms in the world and is the recipient of the Women Lawyer of the Year Award 2019 by Business World magazine. Ms. Jain, may I request you to deliver the welcome address?
I'm actually overwhelmed. Honorable Chief Justice of India, Dr. Justice Chandrachud, Justice Michael Wilson, the Attorney General of India, Mr. Venkataramani, who is supposed to be here, but unfortunately he's not feeling well, so he sent us a message. The Solicitor General of India is on his way, should be here in a couple of minutes. The Chair of the International Section of the American Bar Association, Mr. Marcos Rios, President of the Law Society of England, Ms. Lubna Shuja, and my co-chair of the India Committee of the American Bar Association, Ms. Purvi Chatani. I am overwhelmed by the response that the legal profession has given to us and the way it has come together today to make this conference a reality. Not a single person that I called, whether our Honorable Chief Justice or our guest of honors or the law firms supporting this conference, thought twice about providing their support. Welcome, sir. The level of participation from the bar, the bench, and the judiciary has been unprecedented. I have never seen so many legal luminaries come together on one platform. We have 5 sitting Supreme Court judges participating in the conference and judges of courts in Hawaii, Singapore, and Fiji, 7 members of parliament, 10 managing partners of law firms, over 50 law firm partners, over 50 general counsels, senior advocates, distinguished law academics, and more than 130 speakers in total. We are also making history in terms of having a strong focus on diversity and ensuring that our strong leading women lawyers get a platform for showcasing their acumen. Over 40% of the speakers for this conference are women. I am deeply grateful to the Chief Justice of India, Justice Michael Wilson, the Solicitor General and the Attorney General who couldn't make it but accepted our invitation, and Ms. Lubna Shuja for accepting our invitation to speak at this conference. Also recognize in the audience Justice Sanjay Karol and Justice Swatantra Kumar. Welcome and thank you for coming. This conference is endorsed as a G20 event by Government of India. I thank them for providing that recognition, especially during India's G20 presidency. The Indian legal fraternity has been at the forefront of all social and economic advancements in this country, from the freedom struggle to political participation for nation building, to helping India achieve its economic potential. We have always led the country with a sense of duty and nationalism unparalleled in other professions. We were able to achieve this due to the strong ideals that are foundation of this profession, as well as the camaraderie our seniors have had with each other, irrespective of their political or ideological differences. I am seeing the same kind of unity for a common purpose here today, to showcase the best of India that we have to offer of the Indian legal profession to our fellow lawyers across the world. I welcome all our international guests who have come from different countries and continents to be here with us today. We are honored that you are giving us your precious time, and we promise not to disappoint you. The conference is hosted by the India Committee of the International Section of the American Bar Association. The ABA is the largest voluntary bar association of lawyers and law students in the world, which is not specific to any jurisdiction in the United States of America. The ABA International Law Section serves as a gateway between international legal practitioners in the US and those practicing across the globe. Thank you, Marcus, for giving us this opportunity today. When I started my legal career, India had just started to assimilate with the world economy post-liberalization, and globalization was all the rage. I am a direct product of a globalized economy. I got to study in the US and UK, and I worked in New York, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and then in India, with an ease not even contemplatable a decade before that. But it also meant I did the same kind of work in all those jurisdictions. There was a rush for standardization of products and services that got marketed not only in its country of origin, but also the rest of the world. But we have seen shifting sands in the last few years. The political slogans for localization, especially during COVID, when we saw several countries face tough economic situations, grew quite sharp. But the interdependencies between economies has grown so rapidly in the last few decades that a complete delinking is neither desirable nor possible. As a result, we are living in what we call a glocalized world. Glocalization, which is a word a lot of you in the audiences ask me, what does it mean? It's a combination of globalization, the words globalization and localization. It is used to describe a product or service that is developed globally, but is adjusted for user or consumer in the local markets. The COVID-19 vaccine that was made in India is a very good example of how globalization and localization interact with each other, how the R&D that gets created in one country can be used effectively to reduce costs and make it accessible for a large number of people. Glocalization has grown even more in significance due to climate impact. To fight the negative effects of global warming, we need a global movement which is attuned to responses by local societies to these challenges. As a result, the Indian legal profession is also once more adopting to this new phenomena. The next 3 days, we will hear from our panelists as to how the Indian legal fraternity and the global fraternity is realigning itself to this global change in their practice areas. In closing, I want to remind everyone of a silent auction that's going to be conducted starting tomorrow in the conference for the benefit of iPro Bono, a not-for-profit organization that provides legal help to victims of sexual assault. Please do participate by remembering that it's for a good cause. We want this conference to be considered unparalleled for the amount of money lawyers raise for a good cause. We undertook this cause drawing inspiration from Honorable Chief Justice of India, who has, through his judgment, speech, and action, furthered the cause of inclusivity in this country. In a recent speech, Justice Chandrachud said, "The rule of law, if understood and implemented properly, is a defense against oppressive structures such as patriarchy, casteism, and ableism." He's made the two-finger test on sexual assault survivors an offense. He also, in his judgment, upholding a single woman's right to abort an unwanted pregnancy between 20 and 24 weeks, recognized as marital rape. Thank you, Justice Chandrachud, for your forward-looking judgments. Finally, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to join us next 3 days of the conference, which is a work of a great amount of hard work and love. And we promise it's going to be an intellectually engaging feast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jain, for setting the tone not just for today's evening, but for the entire conference. Now I would like to ask Mr. Tushar Mehta, the Solicitor General of India, to deliver a special address. Mr. Mehta began his career as an advocate in 1987. He was designated as a senior advocate in 2007 by the Gujarat High Court. He was appointed Advocate General of India in 2008 and Additional Solicitor General of India in 2014. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Mehta, please join us on the dais.
At the outset, I tender an apology for being late. My apologies to my Lord, the Chief Justice of India, and all of you. My Lord, the Honorable Chief Justice of India, our iconic Chief Justice, Justice Chandrachud, Mr. Wilson, two gracious ladies, Ms. Lubna Shuja and Purvi Chauthani, my dear friend, Ms. Jain, Justice Sanjay Karol, ladies and gentlemen. The event of glocalization could not have been organized in a better venue than in India, because India stands the ideal glocalization point for the entire world. Friends, since last few years, the world has witnessed a remarkable progress in variety of areas. So far as India is concerned, it's progressive, it's succeeding leaps and bounds. It has spread its wings in all spheres of life and is now a chosen destination as an economic powerhouse of the world. We have our own local manufacturers, local products, local services, and we contribute globally as well. So far as economic powerhouse is concerned, since last about 5 to 7 years, there has been a remarkable jump in the Indian industrial sector and in different sectors of small and medium industries. Resultantly, in the index of ease of doing business, India has got a sudden jump and is now crossing the 79th mark as compared to where it started few years back. We have 100% FDI, foreign direct investment, through automatic route. That's not something which is glaring or relevant. The most important and remarkable part is, during COVID pandemic, when finances were draining from the rest of the countries of the world, India recorded maximum foreign direct investment even during those trying times. When we talk of glocalization, we necessarily talk of contribution of local products and contribution of those products in the global economy. Friends, we have started digitization in a very big way. As a nation, there are two very remarkable schemes called Digital India and Startup India. We have today in India 115 unicorns with a cumulative valuation of over $350 billion, and India is the third largest startup ecosystem of the world today. Digitization has played a very dynamic role and has placed Indian citizen into the world map. We have 750 million mobile internet users as on date, and India is adding one internet user every second. That's the impact of globalization. A local man selling local products or discharging some local services is now connected with the globe, with the global business, global services, etc. Very importantly, when we talk about India as a destination, we necessarily talk about the human worth, the people of the country, because more and more people in the world are investing in India, investing their time, their energy, their ability, their technology, etc., to ensure that the country is safe and healthy. India has the largest insurance scheme in the world called Ayushman Bharat, which encompasses and covers 500 million people, which is more than the population of European Union. It's completely cashless, it's completely seamless, and it's completely paperless. That's the impact of globalization, and the goal is to ensure that an Indian citizen not only contributes to the global manufacturing or global services, but also can compete at the international level, and international players come here and utilize human capacities in India. Friends, the best part of globalization, the best example of globalization, along with local manufacturing, was witnessed when we faced one of the most serious crises a humankind has ever faced, namely COVID. Except one or two countries, no country had their own indigenous vaccine. India could produce 2 local vaccines. India gave 2.2 million doses to its citizens and administered total vaccines, and please listen to this figure carefully. India vaccinated people and administered vaccine doses globally, locally manufactured, to the population which is 2.5 times the total population of United States and European Union put together. But that was our globalization drive. We believed in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, namely, the world is our family, and we not only vaccinated each and every Indian citizen, but we also helped several nations by supplying vaccines locally manufactured here in India. That is one of the marvelous examples of globalization. Now, coming to the role of law, we have made several statutory changes. We have made several legislative changes. We have several legislations like Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. We have reduced the corporate tax. We have several other provisions. We have discarded several laws which came into conflict and used to clog our legal system. And now, the ease of doing business and ease of getting justice delivered has become very faster and effective. The judicial system, under the very, very able leadership and stewardship of, as I said, the iconic Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, has also adopted digitization in the process of dispensing justice. One of the great example is digitization of the entire court record. We have complete e-filing. There is no physical filing. Most of the courts are paperless. And the judiciary as an institution of judicial governance has utilized and adopted artificial intelligence and machine learning in their respective processes. The Supreme Court has very actively used artificial intelligence and machine learning in its dispensation, and we have a scheme called SUVAS, which is Supreme Court Vidhik Anuvad software, again under the remarkable leadership of the Honorable Chief Justice of India, which has the capacity of translating the judgments as well as legal documents in 9 different languages. This is what we are doing to ensure that the common man knows what the highest court of the country is ruling to protect his fundamental rights. Online dispute resolution is growing. Online dispute resolution records our commitment as a nation that the resolution of dispute before the dispute occurs is more important than its resolution after the dispute has occurred. Friends, we have yet to hear the wise words from my Lord the Chief Justice of India and other dignitaries, two graceful ladies. I'll not take much of your time. I once again tender my apology for being a little late. I tender an apology, my lords. It was some unforeseen circumstances which resulted into a little delay on my part. Kindly pardon me for that. And I wish you a very happy evening today and always. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta. I would now like to invite Mr. Marcos Rios, the chair of the International Law section of the ABA, to come up to the podium to deliver a special address. Mr. Rios is a partner of Carey and the co-head of corporate mergers and acquisitions, insurance and government procurement groups. He is a member of the District of Columbia Bar and has been recognized in corporate and M&A by Chambers Latin America, in anti-corruption investigations and compliance by Latin Lawyer 250, and in government contracts, hospitality and investigation by Who's Who Legal. Mr. Rios.
Thank you.
Hon'ble Dr. Justice Chandrachud, Chief Justice of India. Honorable Supreme Court Justice for the Supreme Court of Hawaii, Mr. Michael Wilson. Mr. Tushar Mehta, Solicitor General of India. Ms. Lubna Shuja, President of the Law Society of England and Wales. Madam Chairs of the ABA International Law Section India Committee, Ms. Pratibha Jain and Ms. Purvi Chotani. Dear distinguished guests and authorities, dear friends and colleagues. I should have spoken with the organizers to let them know that I usually need to step up to these things because people in the back probably won't see me, but at least you can hear me. First, I want to say namaskar, good afternoon. That is about the only thing I know in Hindi so far, but I'll be staying here a few days, so I promise to learn a little more. My name is Marcos Rios. As I was introduced, I'm a Chilean lawyer. I practice corporate and M&A law in Santiago, Chile, and I chair the ABA International Law section. Before I go any further, for those of you scratching your heads and asking yourselves, why is a random Latin America chairing a US Bar Association? Let me clarify to you that you don't have to be a US citizen to be admitted to practice in the US, to be a member or a leader of the ABA or its international law section. Also, let me tell you that the annual dues for non-US lawyers are very affordable, so I'll be taking your registrations right after the conference. No, joking aside, for those of you who may not be familiar with the ABA and its international law section, let me tell you that the ABA has over 4,000 members worldwide. It's the world's largest voluntary professional association, as well as one of the world's most, if not the most, influential bar association. It has all sorts of influence in the US political system, in the US legal system. For example, it is the sole qualifier of law schools to be admitted to the bar in the different states in the US. It has also set the rules of professional conduct that are applicable throughout the United States. It provides in-depth research of every single candidate to the U.S. Supreme Court, and members of the ABA are called for hearings in the U.S. Senate. So it is one of the most important legal institutions in the world. The international law section, our section, the international section, as I like to call it, is the international branch of the ABA. We have approximately 12,000 members from over 100 countries, and we have 55 specialized committees divided in substantive practice areas and also geographic regions. Our committees meet at least monthly and work on legal publications, international public policy initiatives, programs like this amazing conference, networking events like this amazing conference, and many other activities and projects. Our core values include excellence, by which we mean that we offer our members world-class expertise, thought leadership, and recognition based on merit. Justice, which means that we promote fair and equitable treatment, access to justice, human rights, and the rule of law around the world. Diversity and inclusion, which means that we advance diversity and inclusion in all our decisions and activities. Community, which means that we foster an international community to share experiences, have fun, develop relationships, and create long-life friendships. Service, which means we provide value to our members and the international community and contribute continuously to evolve to meet their needs. And business development, we like to say that our members' business is our business. We help lawyers connect, expand their practices, and grow. To be here today marks the accomplishment of an important goal of the International Law Section. Our members from India had been growing substantially in the past few years. So when I was chair-elect, I made it one of my goals as chair to bring the ABA to India. I must say, however, that there is no way that this conference would have ever occurred without the great fortune of having, number one, the two co-chairs of the International Section's India Committee, who are to be reckoned as true forces of nature, who will not take no for an answer, and who are true examples of strong, visionary, kind, and effective leadership. Pratibha Porvi, you truly are among the best leaders I've encountered in the section. Thank you for your outstanding vision, motivation, and hard work, and for making this happen. Second, this would have not been possible at all without the huge institutional, organizational, and logistical support of Jindal University, the leading global educational institution with which we had the huge fortune to partner with. Raj, I just can't thank you enough for your amazing Jindal team, for your extraordinary work, your high quality standards, your generosity, and for making this possible. Thank you. I also want to commend and thank all other organizing committee members for their hard work and commitment, and all the sponsors and attendees and registrants for their support of the conference. You too have made this possible. Dear friends and colleagues, I trust we will meet and hopefully exceed your expectations, and that this day will mark the beginning of many lifelong business, professional, and personal relationships. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rios. I would now like to ask Ms. Lubna Shuja to deliver a special address. Ms. Shuja is the first Asian, the first Muslim, and only the 7th woman to become president of the Law Society of England and Wales, which represents 200,000 solicitors. She works with a number of professional regulators. She's currently an adjudicator chair of social work, England's Fitness to Practice Committee, a legally qualified chair of the General Pharmaceutical Council's Fitness to Practice Committee, and a chair of the General Chiropractic Council's Investigating Committee. I would like to welcome Ms. Lubna Shuja to the podium.
Thank you very much. Honourable Chief Justice Chandrachud, Honourable Justice Michael Wilson, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panel, good evening. I am absolutely delighted to be here today with you all for this fabulous event, and very pleased to be here in New Delhi to kick off the ABA India Conference 2023 with an evening to celebrate our different cultures as we look at law in the age of glocalisation. It's my first time in India. I am really enjoying myself. You have a beautiful, beautiful country. The food is fantastic, the weather is amazing, and I don't want to go home. But, as you've heard, my name is Lubna Shuja. I'm the President of the Law Society of England and Wales, and we represent the solicitor profession, which has over 200,000 members. At the Law Society in England and Wales, we regularly engage with the UK and the Indian governments, as well as the Bar Council of India and other trade and professional bodies. And we do that to promote collaboration and knowledge sharing between the two jurisdictions. This is an important relationship to both legal professions here in India and also back home in England and Wales. The UK and India already have strong ties in numerous areas, such as trade, laws, and policies that go back centuries. We have seen growth and development on both sides, and these ties have only strengthened through mutual support. Indian trade, including its legal industry, has ventured into various international jurisdictions over the last few decades. The UK has remained a welcoming destination for Indian business, and this is not only reflected in the amount of collaboration and professional migration that continues and strengthens between our two countries, but also by everybody who is here tonight taking time out of their busy diaries to travel here to acknowledge the importance of forging global legal relationships. As you will all know, this conference and the timing of this conference is opportune for us given the ongoing UK-India Free Trade Agreement negotiations. The 7th round of negotiations took place in February this year, only a few just recently, and we hope that the agreement will deliver meaningful outcomes for legal services. We have extensive experience in legal services reform in the UK, as well as in regulating an open jurisdiction. We are ready to share our expertise to support the discussions between our respective governments. Our current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has reiterated the UK's commitment to an agreement with India, and your government shares that same commitment. I am so pleased that we can build on the current momentum to foster further ties with the Indo-Pacific region. These are exciting times for the UK-India trade and investment relationship. Back home in England and Wales, we have a very open and international legal environment. We are proud to be home to legal professionals from nearly 100 jurisdictions, and we are a base for over 200 foreign law firms. This openness to international talent has helped to turn our jurisdiction into a global leader, with legal services adding a total value to the UK economy of £60 billion. It has also brought skills and expertise into England and Wales, which were not otherwise found domestically. And it supports greater consumer choice, business outcomes, and economic growth. Finally, it has supported inward investment. We know that companies have greater comfort making investments when they can access legal services that they are accustomed to working with. Many Indian lawyers work in the UK, and there is no reason to believe that India may not enjoy similar successes as a legal jurisdiction in the future. Indeed, the current Indian government has consistently told the world that it is open for business, and the jurisdiction is becoming increasingly welcome to foreign organisations and investment. Now is the time for both of our countries to engage around win-win opportunities to benefit our businesses and our citizens. As I have said at the beginning of my speech, the Law Society of England and Wales is the representative body for over 200,000 solicitors. We are their voice, we drive excellence in the profession, and we protect and safeguard the rule of law. And indeed, protecting the rule of law is one of my presidential priorities during my year in office. The Law Society works globally to protect lawyers who face intimidation and persecution simply for doing their job, and we strive to maintain rights for all. The Law Society has always played an active role in defending the rule of law and supporting lawyers at risk worldwide. As President, I am continuing this proud legacy, in addition to fiercely protecting our rights at home. This is much like the work that is currently being done in India on upholding the values of liberty and freedom and combating gender discrimination. We would welcome collaboration on these issues. I'm sure everybody in this room will agree that anyone who has the talent, the ambition, and the capability to join our profession should be welcomed and able to progress as far as their skills and drive will take them. Diversity is a strength and an asset. It leads to better decision-making and stronger businesses. Before I finish, I would like to turn to the theme of law in the age of glocalisation. Convergence of India and the West. India is one of the world's oldest civilizations, but it's only been independent for 75 years. In the last 3/4 of a century, India has progressed immensely, and it is now the 5th largest economy in the world. India is a country of enormous opportunity, and there are the chances for collaboration not only with the UK, but with nations all around the world. We look forward to working with our partners in India to increase investment, harness the power of new technology, and seize the benefits of its innovative workforce environment. I look forward to building further on the collaborative and supportive relationship shared between our two countries. May that relationship continue to prosper and grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shuja. I would now like to invite the Honorable Mr. Justice Michael D. Williams to deliver a special address. Justice Williams was appointed as judge of the Hawaii Supreme Court in 2014. Prior to being appointed to the Supreme Court, Justice Williams served as a circuit court judge for the Hawaii First Circuit and previously served also as the director of the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources. It's a pleasure to welcome you.
Aloha, which is what we say coming from Hawaii, and namaste. They mean essentially the same thing, recognizing the beauty in each human spirit. And in particular, I want to say how honored I am to be here with the Solicitor General of India. And I'll apologize for a request that I would be making later in my remarks. And it's, of course, an honor to be with the Chief Justice of India. What a wonderful opportunity. And as well, thank you for your address, Ms. Shuja. It was great to hear about the power that's coming from England and Wales. And Marcus Rios, I've heard a lot about you. Now I get to see you in person, and I'm also excited about making this request with the representative of the international section of the American Bar Association. And Ms. Chachani, I think we're going to be together on some panels, and I look forward to being with you as well. But let me say that I think maybe it was destined that I'd be able to speak to this audience with this eminent panel because of a request that I'm going to be making, having come from Hawaii, but having come from Hawaii via two institutions that have shaped our culture. And this is a story of glocalization. And those two institutions are the Supreme Court of India and Jindal Global Law School. I should say as well that one of the most remarkable legal minds, a powerful India person who I've had a chance to have some, shall we say, life coaching from, is Pratibha Jain, who we've all seen in action. And it's so exciting to come from Hawaii to see that. But to get to the point, keep in mind that Hawaii, you've all heard of it, the most remote landmass on Earth, and if I were to look inside your mind as sort of the collective human consciousness and ask you what's the ideal environment on Earth, like most people on Earth, you'd be thinking about Hawaii. But we have had a problem that can only be solved through the international legal system, through the rule of law. And that's a problem having to do with our future, because our natural resources are very much in an emergency state. We are having trouble with our drinking water supply. And as you probably know, because of sea level rise, it's likely that we'll lose our beaches in the future. So we have to reach out internationally, and we had that challenge. And through some rather fortuitous circumstances, Vice Chancellor Kumar came to Hawaii with Justice Swatantra Kumar. And that led to having two Chief Justices of the Supreme Court of India, Justice Thakur and Justice Chandrachud, come to Hawaii. Now, how many times do you think we've been visited by a member of the Supreme Court of Hawaii or the Chief Justice? So you're starting to get the point. So Hawaii started an environmental court. And you had the greatest environmental court in the world, the Green Tribunal, and your justices came to Hawaii to help us, and that empowered us in Hawaii. Not only that, we have had the direction of the law, the actual decision-making of the Supreme Court of India that I had the pleasure of helping to put together the Global Judicial Institute on the Environment, which is a group of justices from around the world organized under the United Nations, as you can tell, with the focus of environment. And so in looking at the case law, looking at the judicial decision-making, there is no more powerful, no more visionary, and no more proven leadership than the Supreme Court of India. And of course, we all know that now it's being led by somebody that, by all accounts, is a leader for the world judicial community, but especially Hawaii, Justice Chandrachud. So now we've gotten to the point, and I'll conclude by saying, there's an interesting kind of discrepancy, a certain amount of tension between some courts in the United States. And I've had the privilege of speaking to Justice Arjun Sikri about this, who also blessed us with his presence. I've spoken to other members of the Supreme Court of India, some of which are here, about this kind of tension. Because at the federal level, I'm at the state level, state Supreme Court, where I've been for a decade or so, and before that, a decade or so at a trial level. At the federal level, there's a movement away from the direction that India is leading the world judicial community, because our courts are becoming more restrictive, allowing less access to the court, particularly if it comes to issues dealing with the environment. On the other hand, although I know there's a rather large caseload for the courts of India, it is a reflection on the confidence that the people have, and there aren't the same barriers that are erected by your court. Your court is much more welcoming. Your court also has been providing leadership on rights that deal with the environment that have helped Hawaii. So we now have case law from Hawaii that is now the most progressive, I would say, excuse me, I'm on the court, so I'm giving myself a little bit of credit, but most progressive and in line with the courts of India, the courts of Europe. So this glocalization, the idea of becoming international, brings me to my request. And Mr. Solicitor General, thank you for your powerful address, looking at what India has accomplished, looking at what's taking place with technology, looking at what's taking place with the development of the rule of law, and with the great minds behind the international section, Mr. Rios, and I wouldn't put this burden on the Chief Justice, of course, for reasons that'll be obvious when I make this request, but so we have had a great alliance with India, our court, our state. And maybe we're at the point of glocalization, the point of the development of the international law where you might consider, do you think it might be possible for Hawaii to become a state of India? If you don't, and I know it's very presumptuous, but if you don't mind speaking to Prime Minister Modi, if you'd like to come to Hawaii first, so you can sort of see what we have to offer. You know, if you could keep an open mind, that'd be great. But it's a real honor to be here, and I look forward to the presentations. I have one, you know, on Sunday at 2:30, if you can help us work out this international law issue. Aloha and namaste.
Thank you so much, Justice William. And now I would like to invite the faculty coordinator for the ABA India Conference 2023, Professor Shireen Mothi, to join us. She is going to be reading out a message on behalf of the Attorney General of India, Mr. R. Venkataramani, who was supposed to be here but couldn't physically join us today, but he's taken the time out to send us a wonderful message. Shireen, please.
Good evening, everyone. Law in a globalized world. Greetings and warm regards to the friends across the Atlantic. The lack of my physical presence be compensated by all the warmth and wishes that I can gather to welcome you all for both an intellectual delight and abundant hospitality that would remain forever with each one of you. I assume that we are Christopher Columbus of law in 21st century, and with mutual understanding and contemplation, we will be able to go beyond lines drawn by cold wars of yesteryears and divisions of race and creed. The reluctant ages of comparative law are dead. The colonial hegemony on legal systems is giving way to shared exchanges. We are in the midst of transitions which are unprecedented in human history. The global impacts on lives of all peoples calls for new engagements on justice delivery and justice administration. Law as an instrument of limited trade and commercial interest has expanded beyond yesteryear's visions and perceptions. The Cold War era has disappeared but assumes new forms of conflicts. Conflicts among nations surrounding economic and resources control are apparently beyond entrenched ideological positions. Migration of peoples and capital are in heady mix of technology and science. The Development School of Economics with an eye on unlimited planetary supply is undergoing birth pangs. The right to equality claims varying from nation to nation are assuming new dimensions. Domestic governance institutions and political party hues are exposed to challenges not easily resolved. The human rights dialogues and demands have added facets that transcend national frontiers. While law concerning trade, commerce, and contracts continue to evolve both by common law accretions and constitutional impacts, as well as World Trade Organization framework, the most important question will be how do we envision a brave new world where equal regard of all and equal access to all of primary resources are ensured, from laws domestically applicable to meet specific needs of each country to laws partly common to all humankind. We are drawn to evaluate the least common denominators of all laws. Several human demands on law for special attention, many of them like dignity, privacy, cultural amalgamations, are not answered by past understanding. There's a conservative backlash across the continents against religious encroachments. Thus, law-making, active people's participation in governance, and intervention by courts will, in order to cope up with challenges, need to ask hitherto unasked questions. I understand that constitutional courts are entrants into governance matters in a big way. Tectonic shifts in court-driven changes are new to our perceptions on Montesquieu. Can we have constitutional theories beyond Thomas Jefferson? Can we have social mediations institutionalized? Many such questions crop up with the dividing lines between political theory, philosophy, and law becoming blurred. Let me invite you for a rich treat in Bharat with its ancient heritages and cultures. The planet Earth is our mother. It has withstood mindless onslaughts and explorations, all to meet humankind's ecological imperialisms. Law has worked on command and control mode. The adversarial adjudication model cannot and should not be the only framework of law. Whatever one may do to trim its unproductive edges or fine-tune its processes, it will still fail in delivering justice to all in state of ease and comfort. Continental exchanges are thus important. I'm sure you will be back with rich memories. R. Venkataramani, Attorney General for India. Thank you.
I would like to make a quick apology to Justice Wilson for getting his name wrong. I am so sorry, that was my mistake. And now, it is my honor and privilege to ask the Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud to deliver the keynote address for today's conference. Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrachud. A brief introduction, even though he doesn't need one. He is, of course, currently serving as the 50th Chief Justice of India. He's a graduate of Mathematics and Economics from St. Stephen's College, Delhi. He obtained a Bachelor of Law degree from Delhi University and a Master's from Harvard Law School. Justice Chandrachud also completed a Doctorate of Juridical Science from Harvard in 1986. On his return to India, he practiced law at the Supreme Court of India and the Bombay High Court. He was designated as a senior advocate in June of 1998. In the same year, he became the additional Solicitor General of India. He served as the judge of the Bombay High Court from the 29th of March 2000 until his appointment as the Chief Justice of the Allahabad High Court on the 31st of October 2013. Justice Chandrachud has been a part of several constitutional benches and landmark judgments of the Apex Court, including matters relating to the Ayodhya land dispute, right to privacy, and adultery. He was a part of landmark judgments also on decriminalizing same-sex relationships, the validity of the Aadhaar scheme, and the Sabrimala issue. Welcome, Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud.
My very dear friend and distinguished colleague from Hawaii, Justice Mike Wilson, Mr. Tushar Mehta, Solicitor General of India, Ms. Lubna Shuja, the President of the Law Society of England and Wales, Mr. Marcos Rios, Chair of the ABA International Law Section, Pratibha Jain, Chair of the ABA India Committee, Ms. Purvi Chotani, Co-Chair, very distinguished colleagues from the Supreme Court who are part of the audience here, and distinguished invitees and participants in this conference. I'm delighted to be inaugurating the American Bar Association's India Conference of 2023, particularly because I also learned from what Mike said a short while ago that we could be actually wielding our jurisdiction under Article 142 of the Constitution to have a more productive association of Hawaii with India, perhaps. I've had the occasion earlier of speaking at ABA's conference in 2021, but I congratulate the organizers for bringing together leaders from across the legal community over the course of the coming weekend. So Pratibha and Ms. Chotani, my heartiest congratulations for putting together such a brilliant conference with your colleagues. As I began to think about this year's conference and its subject, which was Law in the Age of Glocalisation, Convergence of India and the West, it sort of dawned on me that in many ways, our Constitution, the Indian Constitution, is a prime example of glocalization even before we ventured into the age of globalization. While the Constitution was framed in a world which was starkly different from the globalized world in which we presently live, it is no secret that the drafters carefully reviewed the constitutions of several countries and learned from their experiences, whether it was in the context of the due process of law or a variety of constitutional concepts which have now become a part of our own tradition. The chief architect of the Indian Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar, explained the importance of global engagement in the process of constitution drafting when he said, "One likes to ask whether there can be anything new in a constitution framed at this hour in the history of the world." And he said that just before the constitution was adopted. More than 100 years have rolled over when the first written constitution was drafted. It has been followed by many countries reducing their constitutions to writing. What the scope of a constitution should be has long been settled. Similarly, what are the fundamentals of a constitution are recognized all over the world. Given these facts, all constitutions in their main provisions must look similar. Dr. Ambedkar further added that the Indian Constitution was not merely an inspiration from the global discourse, but was based on the local aspirations of the country, when he stated that the only new things, if there can be any, in a constitution framed so late in the day, are the variations made to remove the fault lines and to accommodate it to the needs of the country. In that sense, our Constitution, our founding document, had a combination of both the global and local and produced a uniquely Indian local product. While the Constitution took inspiration from the global, the course of jurisprudence and law that it chartered was innately rooted to India. As we discuss this 7 decades later, there is no doubt that the Constitution was a transformative force in our society. The Constitution was grounded in our social and political context, while also trying to incorporate global practices. However, what has changed over these 7 decades is the fact that we are in an increasingly globalized world. Now, not only do the meta lessons flow across borders as they did 70 years ago, but our day-to-day lifestyles are influenced by the happenings across oceans. Our age has consequently led to our practice in terms of laws being more interconnected than ever before, be it in terms of data protection as we draft our law, or in terms of our jurisprudence on insolvency or arbitration. The impact of comparative jurisprudence is continuously rising and evolving. Of course, there is nothing surprising or spectacular about this journey. Rather, one of the most innate human tendencies is to learn from others. This is what has enabled our species to evolve and thrive. The extent of our being interconnected is obvious from the breadth of the topics which will be covered in the conference itself. Hence, I begin by congratulating the organizers in the manner in which they are covering over 25 subtopics under this theme. The law has, in a sense, served as a global currency of trust in our globalized world. And I borrow that phrase from what a distinguished judge of the Singapore Supreme Court, Justice Sundaresh Menon, has said in a recently published book called Transnational Commercial Disputes in an Age of Anti-Globalism and Pandemic. The book is by Chief Justice Sundaresh Menon and Anselmo Reyes. So they describe the law as a global currency of trust. Globalization has, in that sense, created a new transnational marketplace. And in the introduction to the book, Chief Justice Menon says that if legal rights can be considered the new currency of trust, then it follows that our own legal frameworks have become the national bank in which we can safeguard and realize those rights. So far, so good. But we are equally cognizant of the fact that globalization has led to its own discontent. There are a number of reasons for this. For the meltdown which has been experienced world over in democracies which were liberal and which we today may wonder whether they are liberal, especially in the context of the jurisprudence which their courts are evolving overseas. There are numerous reasons for the meltdown which took place. An anti-globalization sentiment, as it were, overseas. One, I think the first of the origins of this lay in the terror attacks which took place in 2001. India was shaken up sporadically by these terror attacks, as we were several years ago in the previous decade. But 2001 was a watershed moment which brought to the global society the stark realities which India had already confronted for years and years before that. The second, I believe, was climate change and the impact of climate change across the world, whether it is in terms of the changes in the monsoons, the changes in cropping patterns, the spread of disease, and the impact of climate change on farming communities, on fishing communities across the world, which threaten the existence of the most marginalized groups in our societies. Climate change is not something which is therefore an elitist notion, but it recognizes the impact of something which starkly faces our societies, especially communities such as those in coastal nations and coastal states, which would be seriously affected by the impact of the pandemic. The third, I believe, is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced nations to shut their borders and to pull down their shutters. The pandemic gave rise to an urgent need to look within, close ourselves to the rest of the world as travel was restricted, as communities struggled to survive. The fourth reason for this global meltdown, I believe, is in the rise of inequality across the world. Because just as globalization produced a larger pie for nations and a reduction in poverty across the world, equally, the share of that increased pie which devolved on the lower half of the population was far less than the share of the pie which was consumed by a fraction of our populations globally. And this rise in global inequality was perhaps one of the reasons for the reaction that you face world over to the rise of not globalization, but localization movements, whether it be in terms of politics or economics or the historical evolution of our societies. As a politician in the UK said, a rising tide seems to lift all the boats. It now seems, he said, that the rising tide seems to only lift the yachts. Now, how do we ensure as professionals, and how do you ensure as thought leaders, that this assessment of globalization as rising the yachts and not the boats is replaced by a model by which it's the boats which rise? And I think that is really the challenge which we face. But I do believe that the COVID-19 pandemic gave us opportunities in darkness and discontent. Because the history of the human race lies in our ability to rise above discontent and to see beyond darkness, even if we cannot see within darkness. And COVID-19 really was in that sense a game changer for humanity. As I will shortly tell you, it has created a new paradigm for humanity, of which we are all a part. And then how do we as lawyers, how do we as judges respond to the challenges which have been posed to us in a post-COVID society? I call it the post-COVID society in the optimism, and humanity survives on optimism that there would be no new variant of the virus which will come to us one day. But even if it did, I do believe that we are more prepared now than we were ever before. But I therefore think that there is something that COVID has done to us. It has produced, first and foremost, a digital marketplace where we've realized the importance of working within. We all live together, we work together, we survived in a marketplace of ideas together. COVID taught us that we could live isolated from each other. But is that a sustainable model? Or do we need to go beyond that by creating an agenda for sustainable development? An agenda for sustainable development in terms of the environment, an agenda for sustainable development in terms of our interpersonal relationships, an agenda for sustainable development in terms of the frameworks and the regulatory frameworks which we create as we move to a more sustainable future in our societies. When the Constitution was drafted, with which I began a short while ago, our Constitution makers had possibly no ideas of the lines along which humanity would evolve. We didn't possess notions of privacy. There was no internet. We didn't live in a world which was controlled by algorithms. And we certainly didn't have the social media. For every little thing that we do, and believe you me, as judges, we are no exceptions to this, because for everything that you do, you face the threat of being trolled by someone who doesn't share your point of view. We live today in an age where people are short on their patience and they are short on their tolerance. They are short on their patience, which is a reminder to me to be brief. But people are also short on the tolerance because we're not willing to accept perspectives which are different from our own. So just as humanity has expanded with the global advent of travel and technology, humanity also has retreated within by not willing to accept anything that we ourselves as individuals believe in. And I believe that's the challenge of our age. Some of this is perhaps the product of technology itself. truth has become the victim in an age of false news. With the spread of social media, something which is said as a seed germinates into virtually a whole theory which can never be tested on the anvil of rational science. But the grave danger which our societies do then face is the danger of not being able to combat what we have now set forth, a change which humanity has brought in terms of the advent of technology, but which is perhaps flowing out of our control. But having put you on guard of the pitfalls of the world which we live in, let's also dwell on the positives as well. One of the great benefits of the age in which we live, the age of globalization, and now, with the problems which we have faced, the inward-looking localization, the need to promote local welfare, is the creation of an international rule of law, particularly in the commercial context. And our profession, the profession of lawyers, the profession of judges, has been a central focal point in generating the creation of an international rule of law. We have created an international rule of law by developing international instruments, as we did after the Second World War, whether it was in the context of the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and then, of course, a whole host of specialized conventions, whether it was the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, or the Convention against Torture, or the Convention against Racial Discrimination. And these conventions have therefore created an avenue for domestic jurisdictions worldwide to adopt an international rule of law and embody it within as a framework for an evolving domestic rule of law. So in that sense, it has given rise to the internationalization or the international germination of domestic law. At a certain level, we have looked at it from a comparative context. So, for instance, in fields as diverse as whether we should have the right to privacy as a constitutionally protected right, or in more commercial context, such as the notions of fairness and equality and fair procedure in commercial arbitrations, we have embodied within our own legal framework international principles which were grounded in a broad framework of rights, certainty, and the legal aspirations of a just international order. But equally, there is a reverse trend which has been taking place, which is the constitutionalization of international law. Just as we have had international borrowings into the local context, we have had the export of domestic ideas into the international context. So what we have written within our systems has become a part of a wider international dialogue across continents and borders. We live in an age where there is a seamless flow of capital across boundaries. There has always been a movement of human beings across boundaries. Thousands of years ago, there were no political boundaries. Human beings could flow seamlessly across continents. As political boundaries grew, there were restrictions on human movement, but globalization produced the seamless movement of people. But above all, I think our age is marked by an internationalization of ideas. And this internationalization of ideas is truly something which holds hope for us as we emerge from the darkness which was cast upon us between 2020 and 2021 in particular. As I speak to all of you from our legal community, let me tell you about how technology has been transforming our lives in the profession which is so close to my life as a judge of the Supreme Court, namely the profession of judging. The COVID-19 pandemic gave us little option. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India then spoke to me and said, "We have to pull down our shutters tomorrow. How are we going to ensure that we will grant bails to people who are in distress, who have been arrested? How do we ensure human liberty?" We had in place a robust technological infrastructure in nearly 18,000 courts in India. We had desktop computers in every courtroom. And I said to the Chief Justice that we have these desktop computers in every courtroom and we could just use them to start video conferencing. So we started some video conferencing in a very gentle way and then expanded it across all the courts in India. What video conferencing has done as a consequence of the pandemic is that it has led to a decentralization of justice. And I think this decentralization of justice is an important paradigm in promoting greater access to justice. Of course, at a certain level, it has promoted judicial efficiency. But it was also promoted a sense of equalization of social opportunities for advancement. The Supreme Court of India is not just the Supreme Court of Tilak Marg in New Delhi. The Supreme Court of India represents the aspirations of citizens in the smallest villages. And what better way to reach out to our citizens than to use technology as a part of our mission to take justice to the doorstep of citizens. So far from technology really being something very complex, the back end of technology as complex as it can be, but the front end of technology is something which we have to utilize to reach out to citizens, so that we reach out in terms of providing all our services. The colonial model of justice was premised on common citizens reaching out to justice. If you look at the architecture of our great colonial buildings of justice, these colonial buildings which provided justice during the colonial regime were intended to be architectural marvels, but they were also intended to wreak a sense of awe and fear in the minds of citizens. You would have a big silver mace which would be placed at the front of the desk of the judge, if only to remind the citizen that the power of this mace could be used on your life if you didn't fall in line. Now that model of justice has to change. Of course, those buildings are our heritage, but the model of justice which those buildings embodied in the colonial era has changed. We still operate a penal code of 1860. But while we operate the penal code of 1860, our interpretation of the penal code has changed. There was a very beautiful book written on the dissents of Justice Syed Mahmood, who was one of the very distinguished judges of the Allahabad High Court. The law in the British era was that if the accused was not present before the judge, it was yet open to the judge to decide the criminal appeal in the absence of the accused by reading the papers themselves. We then reinterpreted our criminal procedure code before the right of a hearing became a part of our law in the criminal procedure code of 1973 by interpreting it to mean that there can be no justice to the accused unless the accused is personally heard by the judge. And you cannot condemn a person to the gallows or for any term of imprisonment unless that person is heard. So we have changed through a process of creative interpretation the colonial model, as it were. And now it is for us as succeeding generations to use the benefit of technology and creative interpretation to reach out to our citizens. As part of our mission in the e-courts project, we are on the anvil now in the Supreme Court of making e-filing universal. Every case would be filed in the e-filing mode. Our e-filing module is undergoing a security audit, But we will have to train our own lawyers, our law clerks, the clerks of the lawyers, because there is an internet divide and we don't want anyone to be left behind in the advent of technology. We have launched into a very ambitious scheme for digitizing records across India in all our courts. We've already started live streaming court proceedings. Our Constitution bench hearings in the Supreme Court are live streamed. The benefit of live streaming is to reach out to citizens. On the flip side, citizens will realize how boring the processes of hearings in the court can be. But in telling them of how boring our work sometimes can be, we are sending out a message to our citizens that in the smallest cases which we decide, of somebody's pension, of somebody's job, of somebody's disability compensation, we take every little case seriously. And that sense which emerges, therefore, from the use of greater technology in terms of live streaming is to remind our citizens that we exist for you and to promote access to justice and to realize access to justice by involving the citizens in the participatory role as people for whom justice is truly intended. There are 30,000 judgments of the Supreme Court, 34,000 judgments of the Supreme Court since 1950. Each of these judgments was available in English in the official report, which was the Supreme Court report, which was woefully behind time. The result was that all the judgments of the Supreme Court were put across to the legal profession by private publishers who would use our judgments to create beautiful headnotes and then offer them for sale to our citizens. I have no difficulty with it because they did a great job. I've used those reports both as a lawyer as well as a judge. But what we have done recently is to digitize the entire 34,000 judgments of the Supreme Court. We've provided a free text facility, a search facility, and each of these 34,000 judgments is now available free of charge for citizens across India. You have law colleges in India which have no resources to purchase law reports. That's the harsh reality of India. We have at one end the brilliance of the national law schools, which sustain all the top law firms in the country, but we also have the base of the pyramid, where there are no books or no law reports. They have no resources. Now, there is, I believe, a duty on all of us as members of the profession to reach out to them. Because unless we reach out to citizens who are at the base of the pyramid, our mission as leaders of the profession would not really be fulfilled. And it is in that spirit that I mention these facets to all of you, to give you a sense of being sensitive to the issues which the large base of the profession faces. Apart from the e-Supreme Court reports, we've launched a new project to translate every one of our 34,000 judgments in every Indian language which is recognized by the Constitution. Already close to 3,000 judgments have been translated into Hindi, and these have been made available to our citizens. Now, our mission to translate judgments is guided by one object, that you must allow citizens who don't know English, and certainly not legalese English that we write and speak of in the courts, talking of ejusdem generis and actus curiae neminem gravibit, and so on and so forth. We have to allow our citizens to understand the work which we do in a language which is known to them. And we are using artificial intelligence and machine learning through a product which is being developed by the IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology at Madras, for the purpose of disseminating our judgments. Just last week, in the course of a Constitution bench hearing, we had real-time transcription of the arguments which were made by lawyers on all sides, including the learned Solicitor General. So the arguments which were made before the Constitution bench were reflected on a screen in the court real time. By the end of the day, the arguments were cleaned up, not cleaned out, but cleaned up. And then, once the lawyers had said that the arguments were fairly accurate, or completely accurate, we decided to open them up to the community. So this is a limitless source for people to understand legal strategy, to teach legal strategy to law students, to show them how constitutional cases are evolved in a court. What is the process of legal reasoning which our courts follow? Because the output of a judge, I do believe, is only a tip of the iceberg in what emerges as the ultimate product of the courts. We are moving into paperless courts, courts where there would be no paper at all. In fact, as a matter of fact, all of us, 5 judges in the Constitution bench, didn't use a scrap of paper. We were completely in a digitized format, and we had the entire caseload on our laptops. We have adopted virtual courts for dealing with traffic offenses, the smaller summary offenses, so that the work which was done by, say, 24 judges can be done by a single judge monitoring a server. Now, all these initiatives are crucial. For instance, what do virtual courts do? A shopkeeper who keeps their shop open beyond the regular hours and has to pay a paltry fine to an inspector doesn't have to waste a day to attend a court to pay the fine. Or somebody who wants to contest a traffic ticket doesn't have to go to court to pay the fine. All that you have to do is that you log on to the server. If you want to pay the fine, you pay the fine, and the case is struck off the cause list of pending cases. So technology in that sense enables us to reach out and to change the profile of the law as standing somewhat apart from the rest of society. But apart from technology, there are vital issues which confront the profession today. Chief among them is the reform of the legal profession itself. In so many ways, our profession is still patriarchal. Our profession is feudal. Our profession is built upon kinships and relationships of community, not to speak of closely monitored clubs of friendship, of association. The law firms in India were at the forefront of becoming equal opportunity employers. The reason for that was that when we generated the new national law schools, there was this inflow of highly talented young lawyers who had to be absorbed on a meritorious basis for employment. The law firms had a very valuable part in India in creating opportunities for women and men and others, and by giving them a level playing field to work on an equal footing, irrespective of parentage, of ancestry, of religion, of caste, of community. But that spread of equal opportunity is still to devolve on the mainstream, as it were, of the legal profession, of those who practice in courts. Seniors in our profession still don't believe that it's necessary to pay young lawyers proper wages. The attitude is that you've come to my chambers to learn. What do I pay you for? That model is really an obsolete model in the age in which we live. And unless we democratize the process of recruiting young people into law chambers in India, our profession will continue to remain feudal in its mindset, and we would not be open to allowing the truly brilliant minds to come into the legal profession. I'm often asked about why we can't have more women judges in the Supreme Court than we have. Or why can't we have more High Court judges from amongst the women that we have? And my answer is not simple. The answer is a little complex, but I hope it has a germ of truth. The state of our institutions today in terms of inclusion, of diversity, reflects the state of the profession, say, 2 decades ago. Because the judges who come into the high courts today, in 2023, or the judges who come into the Supreme Court in 2023, reflect the state of the bar at the beginning of the millennium. Now, unless there was a level playing field for women to enter the legal profession and to thrive in the legal profession between 2000 and 2023, there's no magic wand by which you will have more Supreme Court judges drawn from amongst the women in 2023. So we have to create a framework, a groundwork for a more diverse and inclusive profession today, if we truly have to create a future where our profession will be more inclusive and diverse. But there is cause for hope. Recruitment to the judiciary in India is drawn from the bar as to the high courts and, of course, to the Supreme Court. But recruitment to the judiciary in India is also drawn directly through the district judiciary into the higher courts. The statistics today on recent recruitments to the district judiciary in India at the lowest level indicate that in many states, over 50%, going up to 60% or more, are women. Now, the cause of that is the spread of education in India. As education has spread in India, women's education is caught up. And there is today a perception on the part of the middle class, the growing middle class in India, that the key to prosperity of the Indian family, the average Indian family, is to educate your daughters. Now, how do we convert that potential into promise? It's not enough that we have this young talent emerging out of our law schools into the legal profession. But how do we ensure that these young women don't fall by the wayside? Either because of the fact that their roles changed as life went on. Therefore, it is for us to create conditions of dignity in terms of the people we recruit into the legal profession. So I conclude by then saying that the importance of the conference which you have organized, and I thank the IBA for bringing this conference to India, is at various levels. It's about sharing best practices. It is about the spread of ideas. It's for creating interpersonal relationships. And I do believe that bringing this conference to India reflects the fact that India truly is a focal point today in the global marketplace, not just of business, not just of industry, not just about knowledge, not just about technology, but in the spread of new ideas. And when I hear statistics about startups, about unicorns, I think what's most important about that is the power of the young. Our country is reaping the demographic dividend. We are a young society. And in the young society that we have lies the prospect for hope that there will be change. So just as I began my lecture by telling you about some of the darkness which pervaded us just 2 years ago, I do believe, as an eternal optimist, that our society, the Indian society, would lead from the front as we aspire to be a more inclusive and diverse society. I didn't have my watch, and I am not sure whether I exceeded my time. Thank you very much.
historically contextual and future forward, and it was absolutely wonderful to listen to you. We would now like to honor our guests with a little memento, and we thought in these times of climate change, what better way to do so than by planting a tree in your name. I would like to invite Ms. Jain to present a memento to the Honorable Chief Justice. I would like Ms. Jain to present a memento to the Solicitor General of India, Mr. Tushar Mehta. If Ms. Jain could present a memento to Justice Wilson. To Mr. Rios. Present a memento. Yes. We would like to I would like to invite Ms. Purvi Chotani to present the next memento to Ms. Lubna Shuja. And if Ms. Chotani could also present a memento to Justice Wilson. Thank you so much. And I would now like to invite Ms. Purvi Chotani, the co-chair of the India Committee of the ABA and the founder-manager of LawQuest, to deliver a vote of thanks.
Good evening, dignitaries on the dais, esteemed guests in the audience, our sponsors, and all of you participants. On behalf of the American Bar Association, I extend my sincere gratitude to each of you to attend this ABA India Conference 2023, Law in the Age of Glocalisation, Convergence of India and the West, organized in partnership with the O.P. Jindal Global University. We are honored to have august speakers today with us, including Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Chief Justice of India, Honorable Justice Michael Wilson, Supreme Court of Hawaii, Mr. Marcos Rios, Chair of the ABA International Law Section, Sri Tushar Mehta, Solicitor General of India, and Ms. Lubna Shuja, President of the Law Society of England and Wales. Their insights at this inaugural session have enriched the conference and set the stage for the invigorating conversations we expect to have over the next 2 days, when we'll have more than 130 speakers and 25 panel discussions and several special addresses. We are especially grateful for the presence of the Honorable Chief Justice of India. His keynote address provided several thought-provoking comments, some negative, but many more that were positive. And those awe-inspiring and thought-provoking comments should instigate action in us. I think we've got a lot to do. We're also delighted and grateful for the opportunity to host this conference here and have legal luminaries from around the world come and share their knowledge, experience, and expertise with us. Many of these speakers have traveled halfway across the world. We also have our third co-chair, Mr. Jonathan Blank, who's traveled from America to the conference. He's also a co-chair with us in the India Committee. Thank you for coming, Jonathan. We are delighted and grateful and appreciative of this partnership with the O.P. Jindal Law School, led by Vice Chancellor Raj Kumar. Without your support, this conference would not have been possible. Also, the organizing committee's hard work meticulous planning, and dedication have been an immense part of the success of this conference. And I'm saying success because I already think the inaugural session has set the stage for success. A big, big thank you to our sponsors. We greatly appreciate your generous support that made this conference possible. Once again, we express our sincere gratitude to our distinguished guests, our esteemed audience, and all of you for being here today. We look forward to interacting with you here in New Delhi and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our distinguished guests, the ABA, and to everyone who has joined us this evening. Before we wrap it up, I would just like to invite all of you, as Ms. Jen has already mentioned, to participate in the silent auction, which is a part of the proceedings. You may donate any item of your choice, and during the conference, the donated items will be displayed. People can bid on a sheet that will be provided to them. And a reminder that the purpose of the silent auction is to increase access to justice for victims and survivors of sexual violence, trafficking, and child abuse. So the details of how to participate will be shared with you. And with that, we will be calling an end to this incredible inaugural event. I would like to invite all of you who are seated here to join us for an evening of Sufi music and a wonderful dinner at the Imperial Lawns. So be sure to join us for that. And I would also like to let you know that tomorrow morning's session will start at 10 a.m. and the plenary session will have 4 judges of the Supreme Court of India. So be sure to be here at 9:45 to participate in that. Another reminder, dinner and Sufi music at the Imperial Lawns starting now. So please join us there. Thank you once again to everyone.